Welcome to Hair Like Hers podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Donna Mazzola, you are an autoimmune expert. And it's not something you come across every day, which is why I absolutely had to get you on the show because I love your niche. And being in the hair world, I understand, obviously, that there is a major, prevalence of this kind of thing happening where hair loss, alopecia is a type of autoimmune disorder. And in my industry, there's no explanation for it. People can't really help anybody out. My industry is trained to put a wig on it, help with your hair loss with extensions or products or whatever, but there isn't enough talk about getting to the root cause of these issues and what may be causing them. So you have a most unique background. You are so overly qualified for what you do. And I would love for you to tell everybody your story of how you became to be, this autoimmune expert, what your story.
Thank you. It's crazy because if you would have asked me 20 years ago, I would never imagine that this is where I would be today. Given that I am actually a conventionally trained pharmacist by education. And so I got my doctorate in pharmacy, over 15 years ago. And I began clinical practice with patients, mainly with chronic diseases. And I found myself always gearing towards away from the medication, but talking more about lifestyle interventions, nutrition. And there was just a lot of eye-opening conversations for me where I realized, wow, there's a huge gap. Like when a person with diabetes doesn't have any concept of what a carbohydrate is, there's a problem here, right? And so, that's what kind of led me down this more passionate interest to further my education and start considering a path in nutrition as well. But it wasn't until 2015 when I was personally diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease that targeting the thyroid gland. It's when it was almost like, okay, this is a sign, that I need to do this not only for myself, but to help others, because I realized having the education that I have, having the background, I had no idea where to start. I was like taken by surprise, completely shocked. I was diagnosed with this condition and the doctors were just like, here's a medication. This is what you have to take for the rest of your life. There's nothing you can do about it. And I'm like, I went through months of the whole grieving process, it was like anger and sadness and shock. And then finally I came to the point where it was like, no, I'm not going to let this control me. I need to get a handle on it myself. And if the physicians can't help me, if the community can't help me, then I need to help myself. And so I need to go back and become that expert to do that. And that's just my personality. So I was like, going back to school, I'm going to get this master's degree. And that's where my blog was born through. As I was learning, I thought, you know what, let me start a platform where I share what I learn so that other people can be empowered too, because I wasn't finding a reputable source of information for all these things that I was learning. And so I'm like, let me be that reputable source to people. And so my blog has grown so organically through that because I'm able to share and empower people to take control of their health, to identify the root cause, not to ignore symptoms that are unexplained, to ask the right questions, to advocate for themselves, to, get a handle on it. Like all you have in life, if we haven't learned anything from this pandemic this past year, like your health is everything, right? And so if you don't have a handle on it and you're not in control of it, then what's left, and so that's kind of been the purpose of it. And it's brought me so much joy too to be able to help people and see people improve.
I love that. I mean, what better way for something passionate to be born, right? As you experienced it, you recognize the lack in the industry, recognize the missing connection between the medical industry and the rest of it. And I think that's how passionate people are born. And I can relate to that, right? I mean, I was hairdressing forever, and then I had to study trichology because I had to understand there's changes happening to my clients' hair. Younger and younger women are coming in with problems that I don't understand, they're not getting answers for, and they have no help.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Right. I feel you. And so you experienced Hashimoto's, which is, I mean, always, guaranteed to affect your hair, basically. Did you experience that?
That's how, yeah. So how I knew something was wrong was because my hair is dry. And I'm like, why the hell is my hair so dry? Like I would feel the ends of it and it was just brittle and dry and breaking. And then the other element was like I was training for a marathon and I'm like, why am I gaining weight? Like this makes no sense. I'm eating so healthy. I'm running, you know, 20, 30 miles a week and I'm finding myself gaining weight. So I went to my physician and was like, something's up. I'm in tune with my body. I know my hair is disgusting. I'm gaining weight. Like, what's happening? And I caught it early, so we were able to check levels and labs and identify. Honestly, my levels looked normal from what a conventional doctor would check, but they found that my cholesterol was elevated, which made no sense. So couple that with all the other symptoms I had, and she was like, you know what? Let's check antibodies, which is not something typically providers do. It takes about 8 to 10 years to get diagnosed with a autoimmune condition. Like people suffer with these symptoms for that long before somebody takes the next step. So that's really the whole point is like, I'm giving you all this information so that you don't wait 8 to 10 years. So you're empowered to ask those questions. And so when you're something like when your cholesterol is elevated, you say, hey, dig deeper because it doesn't make sense. I eat healthy. And that's how I was able to get diagnosed is, you know, being in tune with everything.
8 to 10 years. That's a really long time.
Yes.
Long
Yeah.
time.
Can you imagine?
Wreak havoc in your body. Well, thanks to people like you, we can learn about what to look out for and, like you said, empower people to advocate for their own health. I love that. There
Yeah.
isn't enough of that, but I feel like it's a movement. I feel like this movement is really happening, and that medicine just won't suffice on its own, and it's just becoming more and more apparent. We're seeing this more and more every single day.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. And it's a beautiful thing to see evolving. Because I think there's always I'm a pharmacist, right? So I do see that there is a place for medicine. But there is also a component that we're totally ignoring being, our lifestyle and nutrition and the foods and the toxins and all the exposures that we're have every single day that are impacting our body. And like that's the element that people are awakening to and realizing that, you know what, if I make some of these changes, I can get off these meds. I can reduce these meds. Like I don't have to be on it. I don't have to feel like I'm jailed by my disease and having this crutch of this medication.
Well, let's educate our audience because there is a lot to be learned here today. So let's start with the basics. Let's just start with what is the immune system and what is its purpose? Let's just understand it from the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the immune system obviously is essential. We can't live without it. And two things, it's both fascinating and complex. But it essentially protects us, right? And so it consists of a variety of cells, a variety of mechanisms that work together within the body to protect us from foreign antigens, foreign species, and it has, it has, like I said, various cells. So there's various cells in the body. We refer to them as T helper cells. Okay. And they're like special agents within the immune system, right? And so when they're turned on and activated, they release these inflammatory cytokines and they tell them, little army, go fight this invader that's here. And when you're done, come back and let's turn off. And so that doesn't always happen though, as clearly as it should, right? Like that whole shutting off component of it. But you have to remember that the essence of the immune system is creating this inflammatory response and inflammatory process. And so I tell people, I know we hear so much about inflammation being a bad thing, but at the root of the concept of what inflammation is and how it's a response to the immune system being activated, it's actually a good thing. So the fact that our immune system knows when to turn on and activate and respond and release this inflammation in order to fight an invader is positive. The problem that we're seeing and why we're seeing it lead to development of autoimmune disease, chronic disease, cancer, in an abundance is because it's not shutting off. There's a chronic inflammatory process that's always there. And you can imagine that's not a good thing to have.
Wow, that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
It's all this talk about inflammation. That's the issue. It's you're inflamed. There's, how to reduce inflammation. And this is like peeling it back another layer, being like, well, no, the inflammation is not the problem. It's the fact that we can't shut it off.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem is everything that's causing the inflammation to stay on and turn on. And also the concept of like this dysregulation of our immune system. And so I think kind of segueing into that, I think is important. But understanding what regulates your immune system. And so we talked about some of these T cells that get activated when a virus comes in, a bacteria, a food allergen, whatever it is. These T cells get activated and they release and they fight. But we're always exposed. So, like, you think about any food you eat is foreign. The sand that your child plays with in the sandbox is foreign to the skin. The dirt you touch, I mean, everything that we come in contact is foreign to our body. So we don't want our immune system to always be turned on every time it comes in contact with something foreign. So it does have a means to regulate itself. Okay. And those cells, they do what they say they do. They're T regulatory cells, and those T regulatory cells are key and so important to kind of regulate and prevent the immune system from unnecessary responses to foreign substances that we come into contact with, because we don't want those to constantly be turned on, right? And so when that's dysregulated and we have a dysregulated T regulatory response, that also can lead to autoimmunity. And this whole concept is what we refer to as immune tolerance. And so essentially that's the ability to prevent a harmful immune response to a detected foreign substance. That's the key right there. And so I mentioned a simple way to look at it is food, right? Like you start eating you've been eating, I don't know, let's think of something people commonly are find that later in life they can't consume is legumes. I hear this all the time. I used to eat legumes all the time and now all of a sudden I can't tolerate them. And so it's having there's obviously some type of immune dysregulation going on within your body. You were able to tolerate them. Your body never identified them as foreign. And now, as you've had this chronic inflammatory process, it's led to what we refer to as leaky gut. So that's a component of your immune system. So these foreign antigens coming from legumes are leaking into our bloodstream. Our body's now reacting and reacting to them in a negative way. And so people are experiencing this bloating and this cramping and whatnot. And so we see that all the time. It's very common. And at the end of the day, it's
so sorry. Is this because you said the foreign antigens on the legumes?
yeah. So
Because of
I refer to them as the legume itself, right? So it's anything that's foreign. We refer to as a foreign antigen, right? That your body is responding to an antigen. So it could be food, it could be an apple, it could be like anything we consume is going to be an antigen.
Okay, so this situation specifically, you're saying that at one point, as an adult, you can no longer handle certain legumes. Is it because the legume has changed or because our inflammatory response system has changed?
Exactly. It's because our immune system is dysregulated. So our T regulatory cells have declined, our gut is porous and leaky. We're not able to identify, and that immune tolerance that I described has declined. It's dysregulated. So your body's not now able to identify what's harmful versus not. So it's just kind of attacking everything. So like it turns into this mess, quite frankly, right? Of like this chronic inflammatory response that's going on that has taken over, and this regulatory response is not able to combat it the way that it should.
Okay. That's definitely not a place we want to be at.
Absolutely not.
Anything like when you all of a sudden develop an allergy or skin condition, like out of nowhere, or something that just pops up.
Yes, exactly. So what I try to tell people is when someone says, oh, I have a thyroid condition and it's autoimmune, the problem is not your thyroid. The problem is your immune system. You have type 1 diabetes. The problem is not your pancreas. The problem is the immune system. You have psoriasis. It's not your skin, it's your immune system. It all goes back to the root of that dysregulated immune system that's going on and these inflammatory components that are contributing to that process and then development of disease.
I think I love understanding the foundation of these things, because I think that's the best way to learn anything. Like if you're trying to get a message across to people, I think you really need to start at that root cause so that they can make sense in their minds, and then you can affect change. Because otherwise, when you do try to simplify something like this, I think people kind of miss the message, right? Um, let's talk about certain autoimmune disorders, common ones that you've been seeing before we get into, preventative measures that people can take. Let's talk about what's happening, what people are reaching out to you for, and just what's popular, because at the end of the day, like, we're all living in the same environment, and if it's happening to one person, it could be happening to you down the road.
Right.
Something that you want to be mindful of.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, like honestly, the most common. So when I look at my following and those that I'm helping, and it's similar with yours, I'm sure 93 or 94% are women that we're talking about, that are suffering from these conditions. And there's several factors that play a role into it. We talked about the environment, hormones, being female is another one, unfortunately, contributes to some of these immune system, dysregulations as well. But really, I mean, Hashimoto's, so autoimmune disease of the thyroid, is probably the number one that we're seeing. Others include rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, lupus, type 1 diabetes. I mean, these are our top most common autoimmune disorders. But I think something that people don't realize is that there are actually about 80 autoimmune disorders out there that exist, are kind of unexplained. There's not really a clear consensus of how to prevent, how to treat, any of that. So again, but at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it all comes from the same root cause, right? As we've just explained. What's concerning about autoimmune diseases, people don't realize, and it's really alarming, is that it's growing at a rate of 19% per year in prevalence, which is huge. I mean, we talk about an epidemic. Autoimmune disease is truly an epidemic that we're seeing. And really, the statistics show that 1 out of 9 women have an autoimmune disease, which is crazy when you think about that, right? If you're sitting in a room, I mean, so many people that I have met that I just, even in conversation, will mention my blog or what I do. They haven't, automatically comes out, oh, I have blank, like fill in the blank,
Right.
all the time.
Thing now, and people are becoming aware that they have an autoimmune disorder.
They are. And so because of, what I find, like, social media is good and bad, right? But like for certain things, it is good because it's, I think, raised awareness for people to not suffer silently, and to at least start asking questions that, yeah, my hair is falling out, for instance. Yeah, my skin is suddenly super dry, or I just constipated and I don't know why. Like just things that is like always like, well, it's just stress. It's because you're stressed. It's all, and that's typically what doctors say, but it's not, and that's why they suffer.
Honestly, more on what you're saying, something I just recently popped into my head, and about this, like, people silently suffering thing, is why I'm trying to shed light on all these hair related issues, right? Because women, we've been trained to deal with it. And so the industry teaches you to deal with it, like a hairstylist or whatever, your hair expert will tell you, all right, well, you just use this product, you can make it look thicker, put some extensions in, that's it, right? But I feel like it's a generational difference too, where today people are learning to be a lot more proactive and to do their research. Whereas before, when you were sick or something was off, back when you were like really young, like,
Mhm.
it was just kind of like, oh, well, no one's trying to connect the dots. You go to the doctor, you take something for it, and you hope you get better, and it disappears. And I love the fact that it is becoming more common. And I personally am becoming so much more comfortable talking about these kinds of issues, because we need to talk about it. Like, we're human beings. There's things happening inside our bodies that need our attention.
Right.
So like there is no conversation like I will not have. Like I will have all the uncomfortable conversations, especially with friends they know and they sit down with me. I'm like, how's everyone's bowel movement? Like, oh,
Right. It's
what's going on?
important.
What do you do for this? Well, or you know what I mean. It's necessary.
Exactly. It's so necessary. There's like nothing embarrassing about it. Yeah.
We all want to get better here.
Exactly. That's the whole point. And like exactly, right? Like you should eliminate every single day. You should like all these things should occur. There's nothing embarrassing about it. Like be open. How do we fix it? That's it. That's the bottom line. So yeah, I totally agree.
Every single day.
What's that?
You say we should eliminate every single day?
Good. You should have a bowel movement every single
That's
day.
the nicest way anyone's ever put it. Every single day. I love that. All right, let's move on to symptoms that are often telltale signs for people. What to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, so with every disease is different, right? But I guess like generally speaking, it's like most people start to experience a lot of things that we had said, like that constipation, the dry hair. I mean, a lot of these are related to thyroid disorder. Um, you know, somebody with like diabetes is going to experience something a little bit different, but some things that are also really contributory to autoimmune disease and overall chronic inflammation that are kind of dismissed are depression, anxiety, a lot of these mental health factors. I mean, those are a result of chronic inflammation, right? And so you have chronic inflammation in the body, that's chronic inflammation in your brain as well, and that impacts those disease states as well. So it's like sudden fatigue, like people just have this unexplained fatigue. I'm just tired, and like I said, it's always you're just stressed. That's what it is. It's you don't have nothing's wrong. Like we can't figure it out. It's stress. You need to figure out your stress, right? And yes, stress is a killer for sure, and that's a key component to impacting your immune system 100%. And I think that in America, that's something that we don't do very well, is mitigate stress. And I think that's why we have such a higher incidence of these diseases, of cancer, of things that are related to inflammation because of our lifestyle, and it's not just food. I mean, food is a huge component to it. But yeah, things like, fatigue is a big one. People start brain fog, right? You hear that all the time. Like, I just have this brain fog. That's a key sign. Like you should not have brain fog. You shouldn't suddenly be tired. You should not require 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day. Those things are not normal. And that's where you have to start digging deeper to say, why is this happening? And what is this leading to?
Right. Take it as a sign. And you don't have to officially be diagnosed with any of these, disorders, but rather it could just be, like leading up to something.
Exactly. I mean,
you don't even need to have thyroid imbalances. You don't need to be, like your thyroid markers don't need to be showing that you have a specific kind of thyroid imbalance, but you could have symptoms of it. And
exactly. And they won't. And that's why people suffer for so long, because your numbers, your gland is going to compensate for itself, right? Whether it's your thyroid, whether it's your pancreas, whether it's going to try to compensate against that immune system dysregulation. And so, yeah, on paper, things are going to look normal. You're going to feel like crap. And you have to recognize that and start to ask questions, start to reflect on what are you doing and how are you living your life that's creating this overall problem.
Okay, so we talked about these different types of disorders. We talked about telltale signs. What are things that people can do to prevent such inflammation happening in the body?
Yeah.
Whether you have signs or you don't, whether you think you're perfectly healthy and everything's fine, or you are experiencing changes, what are things that we can do, that everybody can do?
Yeah. So I think when we talk about inflammation, it's complicated, but it's not at the same time. I think it's complicated because it's a big change for majority of people because of the way that we live. And so those are kind of things that I like to highlight is it's our diet, our food. What are we consuming, right? And so we don't consume real food. The vast majority of people are eating food-like substances. They're eating convenience foods, fast food, frozen food. I mean, things that are just filled with chemicals and substances that are foreign to our body. Doesn't know how to respond, creating a chronic inflammatory state. Like diet in and of itself is one huge component to tackle when we think about just the standard American diet being so processed, being so high in sugar. I mean, sugar in and of itself creates this insane inflammatory response. Alcohol creates this insane inflammatory response. Like we are drinking and eating processed sugars and eating fast foods at a rate that we never have ever done before. And so it should be of no surprise that we're seeing this increase 19% prevalence per year, that 1 out of 2 people will have cancer, right? That's how they will go at the end of their life. That's all related to inflammation. Cancer equals inflammation, period. That's what I always tell people. So food is one concept. Stress is a whole nother concept. We have our bodies under this constant stressful environment that leads to this immune dysregulation. It impacts the hormones that target our immune system, and like we have to mitigate that. There are actually studies that have demonstrated meditation done for a period of 4 weeks consecutively has reduced inflammatory markers in the body. Like they actually drew blood and tested to see these inflammatory markers before and after meditation and saw steep declines. That just tells you like meditation, yoga practice, things like that scientifically does have a positive impact on our inflammatory markers. Sleep is another one I always bring up. And we don't value sleep enough. It's like our body needs to shut down and regenerate itself. It needs that time to regenerate. It needs that time to just stop working so that it can get up and do what it needs to do the next day. That's impacted by our sleep hormones, our wake hormones. All those things are crucial and critical. They play a role within the immune system. So like think about
Actually sleep properly because they're having issues or they're so high strung they can't shut down.
Exactly. Their cortisol levels are so off. They're up at 2 a.m. every day, like, I don't know what to do. And then they can't get back to sleep, right? And it's all intertwined. That's why I say it's complicated, but it's not, because it's complex, but we need to value sleep more, right? Like, I mean, sleep hygiene, sleep is so huge. Like people say, what can I do? Like low hanging fruit, sleep. Get 8 hours. And you tell people 8 hours, they look at you like you're crazy. Like you can sleep 8 hours.
For a lot of people, right? Like I feel like so many people have difficulty falling asleep. It's such a thing now, right?
Yeah. Well, because we're stressed.
Right. I got a couple hours of sleep. I was up all night or I couldn't fall asleep, whatever. It's just becoming so common. And I think it is so
That's
sad
a problem.
because it is so important. It's like the one thing that we can do for ourselves easily.
Exactly, right? So I always say like control what you can control, because there are things that are out of our control. I mean, we can't control the pollution in the air, but that's creating inflammation. We can't control some of the toxins that we're exposed to. Like we do our best, but like you think about our furniture, rugs at our homes, I mean, everything's got these toxins in them, and they're going into our body through our skin, our skin products, hair product, all of that is impacting inflammation, right? It all drives it. Our body has like a built-in detoxification system that's able to cleanse and remove these things. But when we overburden it, it can't do its job. So that's why that's always my message is like control what you can control. So control your diet, control with sleep, mitigate stress. You need to exercise more, and there needs to be movement, right? In order to, we can do all those things. Our body is pretty awesome. Like it can do the rest, and if we're equipping it with the nutrients it needs, which we'll get into, then it kind of balances itself out, and it almost becomes just like cruise control. You don't have to think about it so hard.
Don't overburden your detox system.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Like it really puts it into perspective because it's like at least eliminate what you can. You won't be able to completely rid yourself of toxins you're exposed to, but that's a really great way of looking at it. Like at least do what you can, make that switch with that product, because there's things that we use every day, like, and hair products obviously are so huge, and I can't stress enough how careful you want to be with your hair products because of the scalp and the condition of the scalp and how it actually absorbs things more than your skin.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like, all right, well, you can do that. Anybody can do that. You can use cleaner, safer products. Making the switch to clean body care and makeup and skincare and all that I think are like the easiest ones that we can check off the list. But some other things are really out of our control. And that's the reality.
It is, but it's it's this understanding that I think lets people take control of their health. It's like recognizing that. And some people are a little bit more extreme in that they really try to control even the things that they can't control. And I think it takes over their life, you know, and I don't like to be that way. Like there needs to be balance. There really does.
Yeah, you got to enjoy your life while you're at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about some remedies for reducing inflammation. What
Yeah,
can you do maybe right now at home?
absolutely. So the number one thing I said, right, was sleep. Easy. Get 8 hours. Like your body needs.
How does one sleep if they genuinely have difficulty falling asleep? Right? Because it's a lot.
So personally, something that I've implemented, and I don't know why I'm so mad that it took me so long to do this, is utilizing meditation right before bed. And I have found, and this came in as I started doing it in the past year, where like my stress level was elevated, right? Due to the pandemic, kids were home, there was so much uncertainty, and I couldn't sleep, and I never had problems sleeping. And so I started utilizing, you know, just some meditation apps right before bed, putting them on 30 minutes. I found myself falling asleep before they even ended. That's how effective it was. And sleep, I mean, my sleep was truly impacted. I was waking up at night, I couldn't fall asleep. And putting that into perspective, right? It lowers inflammation, it clears your mind, and it puts you into that deep sleep. So it's something that I try to tell people to try. Like, don't go towards medications. You know, try meditation, try essential oils. You know, they do help to kind of set the tone, put you to sleep. Lavender essential oils have tons of research and science behind them that have demonstrated an ability to like reduce anxiety. They work in the same mechanism that these sleep meds work, on the same receptors, right? But they don't come with those nasty side effects. So it's worth trying. It's a safe, effective way to at least trial to see how you can improve the overall sleep pattern. So sleep is one. I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, like we talked about, is diet. It's our food. It's the food that we're eating. And people are always like, okay, what should I eat? What diet should I follow? And like my easy switch for that is you need to eat 9 to 12 servings of fruits and of, I just say plant-based foods, of plants, okay, in a day, of a variety of colors and species. And so like eat the rainbow, right? Try to do that. Incorporate things like seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, like so much benefit to those from an inflammation standpoint. Incorporate herbs, whether it be through herbal teas, through spices, through whatever, like in your cooking, those all count. Those all count as a serving. Consider your protein intake. Protein is essential for detoxification. Like people don't realize that when you don't consume enough protein, like your liver is unable to conjugate and like bind up those toxins and send them off to be eliminated. So like consuming that protein, good fats that are in your body, like improving omega-3 fatty acids. Yes, people take supplements for it, but really consuming good fats, avocado, you know, using oils that are things like olive oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, things like that, that have that anti-inflammatory potential. So really looking at the diet as a whole. I mean, an easy button when people are like, what should I eat? You can follow the Mediterranean diet, pretty much is an anti-inflammatory diet overall.
What
Um,
like anti-inflammatory foods, right? Like we know we talk about nightshade, vegetables, and things that create more inflammation in your body, right? Like
yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
foods or anything like that. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, so nightshades, everybody's different. So it's not like a blanket statement that we can say that everybody reacts to nightshades. A lot of times you can eliminate nightshades and kind of heal the underlying cause of your inflammation and reintroduce them, and people have no problem with that. Um, but considering anti-inflammatory foods, things, and I mean, it's of no surprise that we've seen turmeric being such a, flying off shelves that people are looking right in.
Everything now. I literally put it on everything. I alter the flavor slightly, but I don't care. I just know too much about the benefits. I'm like, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
the whole thing tastes like turmeric.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I actually take whole root turmeric and put it in a smoothie every day. I add black pepper to it, and some fat. Fat boosts absorption, black pepper boosts absorption, and the fresh turmeric root. And like when I did that for 6 weeks when I was first diagnosed, my antibodies, which are a reflection of the inflammatory process in your body, went from like over 1,000 down to 400. So like
Just by doing that.
steep decline. And I swear that's what it was. Like, this is totally anecdotal, but I did nothing different except for that. I drank that smoothie every single day for 6 weeks until I got my blood redrawn. And so yeah, I was telling people all the time, like with my experience, that's what happened with turmeric. Ginger is another one. Ginger is amazing. And all these things I'm mentioning are working on the same inflammation pathway that you think about. So if any of you listening have an autoimmune disorder, and you're familiar with kind of being prescribed steroids to reduce inflammation, okay? So that's typically the go-to drug. And we know that that comes with tons of side effects that are not good. But they do a good job of reducing that inflammation. All these things I'm mentioning right now work on that same pathway that steroids work on, but it's natural. It doesn't come with those unnecessary side effects. So things like turmeric, ginger, matcha, there is science behind that. Omega-3 fatty acids, like we mentioned. I mean,
What about
when
foods to avoid? Besides the fact that you talk about processed foods and the fact that we're not eating any real food, what about what kinds of real foods maybe
can contribute. Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about sugar, processed sugar, alcohol, those things. Other things that, yes, create an inflammatory process are gluten. Um, and it's not, and people say like, oh, it's a fad. Like my parents, for instance, all the time. Well, we always ate bread and gluten and nobody had a problem. Like now all of a sudden you guys all have a problem with it, and it's like, okay, fine. I get that.
Moreover, on what I was saying, like it's not the same world anymore.
Not the same, exactly. So
One.
like what's happened with bread and like the wheat, right? I mean, gluten is the protein within wheat that we're reacting to. And what's happening with like manufacturing process is they're adding more gluten to the bread, right? So it's a naturally found in it, and then they're adding an even more um, even more to it because it improves texture, improves taste. So like they've now man-made our bread, right? With an abundance of gluten. So it's same thing, like our body's not used to that. So it's same thing with overloading your detox system. You're overloading your body with gluten. Is it also the fact that wheat is sprayed down with like glyphosate? Like I did a post on that once, like ask the question, like, is it gluten or is it glyphosate? Like, what is it that we're reacting to? Will we ever know? Um, I don't know. But there is, from autoimmune standpoint, there is some data out there that demonstrates similar molecular response when your body, like specific to thyroid, like the gluten molecule looks similar to the thyroid gland molecule. And so the body attacks it, not thinking it's the thyroid, right? And so you can create a greater immune response. So there is some data out there that supports that. The other thing is dairy.
Right.
I don't recommend dairy for anybody. When you really think about it and how disgusting it is, like we drink a cow's breast milk, like that's just gross. Like what other animal does that? Nobody. Um, but dairy essentially, like after the about age 7 or 8, majority of people can't break down lactose. And so like I think it's around 70% of adults are lactose intolerant. People don't even realize that because they consume it all the time. People are chronically bloated and chronically have like these abdominal issues, and they're just like, I have IBS. I don't know.
Right.
Like, no reason for it. I don't know what's happening. It is what it is. I'm going to keep eating my cheese. But when you take them off of it for a period of 4 weeks and then they reintroduce it and you give your immune system a chance to relax, when they reintroduce it, it's like a shock to the body, and then they feel it. They feel all kinds of abdominal issues, gas, bloating. They get the runs, I mean, whatever you want, because we don't tolerate it. So like gluten and dairy are key. I mean, soy is another one that I always target, and very controversial topic, but soy in the United States, 99% of it is GMO. And so that's really the reason for behind soy. Like if you can actually find true unprocessed soy, which is very hard to find, then there could be some potential benefits outside of that. But really, it creates an inflammatory process. So I always, those are my three, is like gluten, dairy, soy, like try to eliminate them. And you can see like in most packaged foods, like what we're giving our kids, I look at everything all the time. There's soy in everything. There's soy in every packaged food.
Ingredient.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. I've heard too much negative things about soy. I've completely cut that out. It's like I want
Yeah.
nothing to do at this point. Okay. You mentioned thyroid. Why don't we talk about thyroid a little bit? Because thyroid issues have become such a big part of the conversation recently, more so, right? It's like everyone has a thyroid issue or has experienced a thyroid imbalance. What is happening? What are factors that are impacting thyroid?
I mean, honestly, it's all the factors that we've talked about. And it's this chronic inflammatory process that's going on in the body that's leading to this. A big one is, for women especially, like I mentioned briefly, is this hormones that play a role. I mean, majority of women after they've had kids is when they experience, this immune dysregulation that occurs and then resulting in some type of thyroid dysfunction, unfortunately. But when you talk about thyroid disorders, it's our environment and our exposures that's really leading to the development and kind of like this epidemic of autoimmune disease. But again, it goes hand in hand with all the other autoimmune disease that we talked about. And being that it's our lifestyle overall, it's our environment that we're exposed to every day, like all these toxins in our environment that we can't control, and not recognizing that they're there. It's the lack of, mitigating stress, the lack of exercise. It's just like this whole negative impact on our overall lifestyle that's causing kind of this surge in autoimmune diseases. But Hashimoto is really being one of the most prevalent that has occurred as a result of all these factors.
How many people, reach you regarding their hair? Or how many people have you come across specifically they're dealing with hair issues? What have you found is the most common cause of it? Let's talk about some hair
Yeah.
stories. Let's talk about some success stories, your tips.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, hair, like I said, like that was my trigger, right? I mean, like, I typically like to think I have good hair, but like I can tell when my disease is out of whack because like I start to feel that dryness in my hair. And so like people come to me all the time, hair's falling out, hair shedding, it's thinning, it's dry. And a lot of times, like that is a key symptom for somebody with thyroid dysfunction. Because when we think about our thyroid gland and thyroid hormones, we have two key thyroid hormones, T4 and T3. T3 is actually our active thyroid hormone, and your body has to convert from T4 to T3. And so it makes an abundance of T4, but then there's a conversion process that has to occur. And for people that have low T3 levels, that's what we associate symptoms with. And so things like brittle nails, hair falling out, dry skin, dry hair, those are all a result of low T3. And so I always tell people like if your levels technically on paper look good, but you're still experiencing symptoms, and that happens a lot for people with thyroid disorders because most doctors simply check a TSH level. TSH just tells us, all right, it's within this really broad range, but then we're not looking at the root cause. And so when our body's not able to convert T4 to T3, that's where we're seeing these symptoms. And so number one thing I tell people is push your doctor to check for those levels. Let's see where you're at first. Let's identify if you have a conversion problem. And if you do have a conversion problem, now let's talk about what nutrients are necessary for that conversion. Things like selenium, things like zinc, vitamin A, iron. Iron is a huge one. I mean, iron and thyroid disorders almost go hand in hand, and low iron, is also highly associated with hair falling out and hair thinning as well. And so it's like really recognizing, what are those nutrient deficiencies that we have, and then pinpointing where the problem is so that we can fix it from the root, as opposed to, just pushing somebody. It just is what it is. You're getting older, your hair's drying out, there's nothing we can do. I mean, I'm sure you hear it all the time. But it's really getting to the root cause of why.
What about T4 hormone?
The what?
T4 hormone.
So T4 is, the body produces T4, but that's not the one that's active, that works at the receptors. Okay. So the body will produce T4, but you need the nutrients necessary to convert to T3, because T3 is your active hormone. And typically, what's important to remember is, like, most people that have a thyroid disorder take things like Synthroid. Synthroid is T4 only. So there's a need for the body to be able to convert. And if you don't have those nutrients needed to convert, your levels might look great, but you're still going to feel like crap because you're not converting T4 to T3. You just have this abundance of T4, but your body is not set up right in order to convert to the active hormone.
Interesting. That's really interesting because I know a lot of people that have been on Synthroid for their, obviously for their like Hashimoto's and to balance out their thyroid issues, and their hair was thinning and brittle, and you could see their scalp, and it completely changed, right? But if you're taking Synthroid, which is full of T4, that's not going to suffice if you don't have the nutrients to actually convert the T4.
Exactly, to T3, because T3 is the active hormone that contributes to these metabolic effects in the body, that works at the receptor sites. And that's what
effects of Synthroid. Are you aware of them? Like, what, people are always so worried about taking these meds.
Yeah. I mean,
common side effects. And how bad is it really? And how bad is it really to take it?
I mean, the problem is, a lot of times when people have gotten to the point of diagnosis, right? So we say like 8 to 10 years, there's so much damage that has been done to the gland that it's almost not reversible. Like, you do need the medication, but you need to balance that with those lifestyle factors that we've talked about today, right? In order to see the true benefit. And if you do that, I mean, you shouldn't see significant side effects associated with it. I think initially when people start on it, they can experience some side effects because they're impacting their hormones. They can experience, vivid dreams, weird night sweats. All of a sudden now, like, we're providing our body with a hormone. And so our body's responding to it in that way. But that should suffice. Like, once levels reach where they need to be, and it's typically within a 6-week period, most of those side effects suffice. But the key is not just taking the medication, but recognizing how you feel when you take it. So if the symptoms that you had before you started, you need to be aware if there's an improvement after you've taken it, at least for a 6-week period. And if there isn't, that's where there needs to be that push, because these are not typically labs that are typically drawn. T4 and T3 are not drawn by most doctors.
I just had my T3 checked.
Oh, good.
I'm at a 3.0.
What's that?
I'm at a 3.0.
That's good.
Fun fact about me.
I'm
showing off, okay? Because I spoke to an OB. I had an issue that I was dealing with, and she was like, first thing, I just had like a major blood panel done with my integrative specialist. So she was like, let me know what your T3 came out to. Because she was thinking that I maybe had low T3 levels for, this certain symptom that I was having. And my T3 was on point. I felt so happy because I know what that is.
You feel like you've done something right. I know.
Oh my God. I was like, yeah, because it's major. I was so scared to look up the number.
I know you feel. I know. That's me every 3 months, like checking that number.
People should know to ask for that level.
They need to. Yeah.
Good work. Like you said, it's not
typical, right? And so, and the whole point of this talk and this conversation right now is to empower people, right? Like, to know, ask those questions. I mean, it's unlike, I've never had anybody say no, but I'm like, I want you to check this. And they're like, oh, how'd you even know about that? Okay. And
right. Yeah. Be a smart ass. Don't be afraid to question your doctor or
your health.
Yeah, that's right.
Your body.
I do it all the time. Okay, let's finish off with something. I want to know what's one thing you've personally changed in your life since your health journey. So, something that you will never go back to, something that forever has changed, something specific to you, Donna. Tell me, what is your one thing?
I mean, I think it's diet related. I have not had, like, I don't consume any processed foods. Um, I've completely eliminated that from my diet, from my lifestyle. I can say my children have never had any processed or fast foods ever in their life. And so that's something that I would never go back to. I think it's just like we're poisoning ourselves. Like, we didn't know better back then. Um, but we know now. And so to keep doing something like that and putting these kind of toxins in our body is just, it's killing ourselves.
Yeah.
And when I look at kids as well, and people might not like this, but I view it as like child abuse. I'm like, it's not wrong. It's so wrong. Like, better as an adult. You've been educated now of what these things are doing to the body, the diseases that can develop as a result of these like toxic food substances. So why are we still doing it? So I think, like, from a dietary standpoint, that's something that I'll never go back to, something I've changed. I mean, I've changed a lot of things over the past 5 years, but I think that one resonates quite well.
Processed foods. So what are you like snacking on? Tell me, like, what are some Donna snacks you'll have throughout the day? Because I'm a snacker. I love to snack. A healthy snack, a quick pick me up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times for me, it's fruit.
Yeah.
That'll be my go-to, a banana, both cherries, grapes. And like I say, like, eat the rainbow of fruits.
And the kids too. So you're giving them, like, what about like when they want to take snacks to school? Like, would they just take fruit?
Yeah, so they take fruits always, like they have some type of fruit. And from a snack standpoint, so if I do give crackers or something, I mean, I'm buying like crackers that are like $10 a box because they have no additives, no preservatives. I mean, like, right? They're made with,
Cardboard.
but they're used to it. So like they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they're missing, right? And so like they go to the neighbor's house and they're like, can we have goldfish? Because I will not allow goldfish in my house, because like the colorings in goldfish, like the coloring that they use to make it gold and orange, I mean, it's just, it's terrible, like, and the impact that it has on their health. So I won't do it, but it's kind of funny when I see them, they'll go down the street and they're like, we want goldfish, and I'm like, stay away from that.
I mean, and you got to practice what you preach, I guess, right? That can't be.
I mean, it's hard, and I'm not like crazy. I follow the 80-20 rule, especially with my kids. I mean, we're not like neurotic here. But like fast food, for instance, it's never entered my house. I've stopped it. Probably it's been 10 years.
My 80-20 rule?
My 80-20 rule is just eating right and healthy 80% of the time. And, 20% is cheating. Literally.
Okay, 20% cheating.
Yeah.
I like that. I think mine's like as soon as the weekend hits, that's when I'm like, all right, baby. I go to the bakery. I'm like, give me my croissant.
That's about 80-20, right?
Yeah.
If you're handling it about 5 days a week, and then on Saturday, Sunday, you're about 80-20 right there.
Yeah, that works out.
Yeah. So that's a good way to do it. Like, eat healthy throughout the week, right? Like, like your breakfast, have your smoothie in the morning, incorporate like 4 to 5 different servings of plant-based foods in your smoothie. Your lunch, like I'll typically make on a Sunday a batch of vegetable soup or salads or whatever. So that way I know what I'm having for breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. I cook at home, right? And so we eat healthy. And then, yeah, the weekends you can splurge a little, and so you don't feel as guilty, and it's balanced.
All right, my dear. Okay, this is awesome. Donna, thank you so much. You are a wealth of knowledge. I've learned so much from this episode. Thank you. I hope and I know that many people will take away a lot from this. And yeah, and everybody just follow her and go to her site, because her page, because it's just full of so much information. I love your posts.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing, because we need more people like you to help empower and educate people on the basics of life and the human body.
Yep, absolutely. I don't plan on stopping.
All right, I love it. I look forward to continue watching you grow. Thank you so much. Thank you.